Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today for a little chat on strength training 101. All right. So we have two main topics today. Number one is why every human being should strength train. And number two, how to do that, how to train for strength and hypertrophy. We'll kind of quickly knock out some definitions here. Strength is the ability to produce force, and hypertrophy refers to building muscle mass. So strength is kind of more the functional outcome of the training. Hypertrophy is more, building muscle mass, which has, aesthetic benefits, but also metabolic benefits as well. And we'll talk more about both of those later. Yeah. So, there's a lot of different skills we can train, right? Different organizations have different ways of breaking that down and organizing, the different ways you can train all these different things. And to be clear, like we want all of these things. We prioritize all around athletic development here at Prevail, and, want that for everyone doing the online program as well. But why prioritize strength? Why put an emphasis on that? A few main reasons that we're gonna dive into. Number one, injury prevention and longevity. Number two, time efficiency. And number three, body composition and maintaining a healthy body weight. Okay. So let's dig into that first one, injury prevention and longevity. Stay resilient. Strength training significantly outperforms stretching for reducing injuries. The link here, we'll share the slides with you guys after, so you can look at the research if you'd like yourself. It's kind of a meta-analysis, just breaking down a lot of different studies that looked at injury reduction with various training programs. And strength training across the board was about to show about like a 2/3 reduction in injury risk, which is awesome. Stretching had no significant change. So that, might go against popular belief, but it makes sense when you think about it. This pyramid here is just a rough visual for you to think about some of the different skills you can train, right? So, that base of the pyramid being mobility, can you just get into different positions, right? Can you move? Are you coordinated? Are you balanced? Think of all those things as being your foundation, but right on top of that, you want to build strength. You want to have capacity in all those different positions. Power is, being able to produce force quickly. So can I be explosive out of those positions? And then, conditioning, can I do those things for a long time, right?
So something just to add there, I'm sure all you guys have experienced it, where you do yoga, you do some sort of stretching, things feel good, they feel loose, and an hour later you feel right back where you started. It was almost like, well, was that a good use of my time? Mm-hmm. So like what we're talking about here is getting strength kind of at those end ranges, so you can help maintain that, and it'll carry on day to day as opposed to just an immediate fix.
Yeah. So, what does that look like when, things the skills aren't as balanced, right? So this top pyramid here is kind of like your classic weekend warrior. They might sit at a desk all week, and then they get out and they get after on the weekend, and they might do some really impressive things, run double-digit miles or do crazy hikes or be an avid cycler or whatever the case may be. But doing those things to their extreme without a good base of mobility and strength and power underneath it can leave you susceptible to injury. The repetitive motions, like running, for example, has a lot of impact on every step, times thousands of steps. You want to have the strength to support that. You're putting yourself at risk if you have, kind of all your eggs in that one basket. And then looking at the pyramid here on the bottom, someone who's, the classic like yogi, they're super mobile, they move super fluidly, but they might not have that much strength in those positions like Peter was just talking about. So, they have access to positions where they don't have much capacity, and injury occurs when the demands placed on your system exceed the capacity of that system, right? So you want to have strength in the ranges that you have access to, right? So injury prevention right there. Okay. And then getting more into longevity. You want to have the capacity to independently enjoy the later decades of your life. Loss of strength and power are the main things that rob us of the ability to live life on our own. Whether that's not being able to get up off the couch or the toilet, or, I remember when my grandma's cooking. I love my grandma's cooking. I remember when she couldn't pull the pots out anymore and cook on the stove. It's like that's the thing that starts to take away your independence first. Adults lose about 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year, with strength being lost faster than that. Here's another link to some research supporting that. So, that effect builds over time, right? Training can help slow that down.
And Kyle, when does that approximately start to happen?
When
you're young, every year it gets better, then all of a sudden you hit that plateau.
You'll see it definitely like in studies about after age 30 in the absence of training, and accelerating after age 50. So again, Dr. Peter Attia here, big big name in the longevity space right now, had the quote that I liked a lot of: if you have the aspiration of kicking ass when you're 85, you cannot afford to be average when you're 50, right? You can start this at any time. It doesn't mean that it's too late to start if you're 75 and want to get started. But there's only so much you can do the later you wait, right?
So the ceiling is only so high.
Yeah.
But yeah, starting when you're young and becoming this stud, which a lot of us in this that are on this call are in this, middle age. It's like what you do now is just paramount to be successful. And again, kicking ass when you're an old man, like the guy pictured on the screen. He's a phenomenal example.
Yep. So yeah, put some money in the bank now. All right. So, and then getting into reason number 2, time efficiency. All right, so we got that little pyramid visual here for you again. Strength training positively impacts the other traits on this pyramid, kind of what the arrows are trying to demonstrate there. So if you have to prioritize one, if you don't have the time to train all these things to their best of your ability, pick strength, right? So as we said earlier, strength can kind of reinforce mobility. If I can get into a nice deep goblet squat, well, that counts as ankle mobility and hip mobility. I'm just doing it under load. If I can do a deep pull up or do a deep push up, those are great shoulder mobility drills that I'm just getting stronger in those positions too. So not just having access to the positions, but reinforcing them, making them more permanent. It makes it stick better, like Peter was alluding to earlier. If my goal is to be an explosive, powerful athlete, well, just being stronger gives me more force that I'm able to produce. So it'll improve power to a point. And then even conditioning. Strength can just make things that we think of as conditioning tasks easier. I always use the hiking example with clients. If every step up that mountain is easier, well, then it doesn't tax you cardiovascularly as much. And then also, you might have a really good cardiovascular engine, but if you don't have the strength to put it to use, you might not really see the functional benefits of that. If you put a engine of an F1 car into my Corolla, it's not going to perform too well. You might blow out a tire, right? So strength training can just make a lot of other day-to-day tasks feel easier. And the benefits don't go as well in the other direction unless you're a novice, right? I'm not going to get much stronger from hiking or cycling unless I'm very deconditioned. I'm not going to get stronger from my yoga class unless I'm very deconditioned. You might see a little bit of improvement to a point, but then it'll plateau quickly because there's not, progressive overload in terms of load in those arenas.
And I like to just think about kind of child development with what, all those that have little kids, or of course you've all been there before, but what kind of ranges do they have? Just crazy extreme ranges, and joke around when kids start to stand up when they're crawling is just to knock them back down, knock them down so they can get up and just sprint. They develop that strength and that stability to be able to do that. And then once that strength is there, when we're young too, we can maintain so much of that. And again, it kind of almost bulletproof the joints a little bit too, when you have strength at those end ranges. So it helps keep us from getting into those injuries. Like, again, a lot of people that just primarily focus on yoga, they have so much instability and so many injuries that are more related to that. And again, it's something that they're naturally good at, but what can we do to put on top of that to help maintain and then build and, be able to access some of these power and other aspects.
Totally. Yeah. So again, not saying to not do these other things. It's just like, if you're time constrained, make strength the focus, make strength the priority. It's kind of the one non-negotiable. Yeah. And then last reason, healthy body composition and weight, right? So if you're wanting to gain muscle, you want to look like Arnold here on the right? Strength train, eat enough protein, eat in a caloric surplus to gain weight. And if you're doing those first two things, it'll be mostly muscle, right? That's how to gain muscle in a nutshell, right? There's a lot of different, concepts and small things you might be doing along the way, but it's all kind of working towards that, right? So that's pretty well understood that if you want to gain muscle, strength train. I don't think anyone needed us to tell them that. But even if you want to lose weight, body fat, no one's looking to lose muscle mass. You want to lose body fat, you need to strength train. You need to eat enough protein. And you just need to eat in a caloric deficit to lose weight. And if the first two are in place, it'll be mostly body fat. You'll maintain muscle. So I think a large percentage of the general population, associates strength training with bulking up and cardio training with slimming down. So we just see that misconception. One, give people the wrong idea about strength training. People don't want to do it because they're afraid of getting too bulky. I like to quote a lot that, just because you don't want to be a NASCAR driver doesn't mean you should be afraid to learn how to drive a car. It's not going to go that well. If it does, that's a good problem to have. You can always back off. But then also for people who just strictly want to lose body fat, like you need to strength train and eat enough protein to keep muscle mass and lose body fat instead, to get the physique that you want, as well as have all the other health and injury prevention and longevity benefits we talked about already.
Yeah. And your body will prioritize what you're asking it to do. So if you're walking around, you got your kid, and kid's 50 pounds now instead of 20 when they started. Your body doesn't want to lose too much muscle mass because it knows it's going to be hard to do those daily activities that your body needs to do. So whatever the top requirements are your body asks, it'll kind of follow suit with all those other things.
Yeah, but if you're not stimulating the body to maintain muscle and you put it in a caloric deficit, it's going to drop the muscle mass because that's a more metabolically expensive tissue. So if you're not giving your body a reason to keep it, it won't. So again, we can talk more about nutrition next month. That's going to be our topic next month. But long story short here, no matter what, strength train. No matter what the goals are here, you want to strength train. And so what do you need to do? Hopefully we've convinced you that this is important. Start with fundamental movements. Okay, so squat. And by squat, we're talking different versions of the squat. Goblet squats and front squats and back squats, and just the movement of squatting, as well as split squats and lunges and other movements that kind of fall in that kind of squatting family. Hinging at your hips. That kind of looks like hinges you might be familiar with from our programs. Deadlifts, even movements like bridges or things where you're where the hip joint is the focus and you're engaging more butt and hamstring musculature. Pushing movements, push-ups, dumbbell presses, barbell presses, both kind of in this plane of motion, as well as getting more vertical up overhead. Pulling motions, so you got your rows, your pull-ups, just things where you're pulling something towards you, engaging more of your upper back musculature and your biceps. Core work, a lot of those other patterns will include a demand on your torso, on your core musculature, but we can train that directly as well, just to make sure we're nice and stable there. And then after those fundamentals, you'd be adding in isolation work as desired. You want bigger biceps, great, do some more bicep work, but don't miss these big rocks first, right? Those things will be, one, train the most muscles in your body just to get a really good bang for your buck, but as well as train human movements so that you're moving better and getting a lot of the other benefits we've described earlier. And then apply progressive overload. The body needs to be challenged to warrant adaptation. So whether that progressive overload comes in the form of weight or reps or sets or range of motion or less rest time, there's a lot of different ways you can progress. But progressive overload, somehow just doing the same routine for forever will keep you the same for forever, right?
Yeah, you might see some great results for X amount of weeks, all depending on what you're doing and where you're coming from, but it'll hit that point of diminishing returns and nothing will happen. You can keep doing what you're doing and you'll stay exactly the same. I'm sure we've all seen people like that in the gym or friends. I'm like, you're still doing the same thing. Yeah, I'm still strong as an ox, but their body's just so adapted to that it's just getting such a minimal response back. So that's why for us, even we may be, oh man, we love this next month's program, but we're going to change it again. Why? Because your body's going to adapt. It's going to need some sort of progression, and it can look like many different things depending on which direction you want to go.
Yep. So what does that look like, in more specific, how many days, how many sets, how many reps, right? For beginners, we're generally starting around like 2 days a week, 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 12 reps of the main fundamental movements. Okay. And why those numbers? 2 days a week, generally it's just like, hey, can we be minimally invasive to your life? This is just a new habit. We're going to see benefits in this stage with very little work. We don't need to go crazy yet. We just generally like 2 instead of 1, because if you do one might not see benefits fast enough to get addicted and fall in love with this. And we want this to be a lifelong habit. More if they miss one, well, then they miss 2 weeks. So we like that kind of 2 days a week number for beginners. 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 12 reps is generally just kind of enough time to practice the movements, to learn them and get better at them. If we go more volume than that, more sets than that, they probably just don't need it yet. We go less reps than that, they're probably not good enough yet at the movements to really push weight heavy enough for it to be challenging. We go more reps than that, they're probably technique will just break down. It just doesn't tend to go as well. So it doesn't mean you have to stay in that range. That's just where we like to start with beginners.
And it's really helpful to practice the same pattern, like squatting. Yeah. If you don't squat every day, well, let's start. If you do it once a week, twice a week, it's just good to have some fundamentals where you get to kind of grease the groove, is a term I've really liked, so that you just get to practice and you get better at things you practice. You want to learn how to ride a bike, you kind of sucked at first and all of a sudden you got it. And then now you're going off jumps and things like that, as your body's just continue to progress and get better. Yeah.
So yeah, we basically find that zone's like enough time to practice without killing you for no reason. Yeah. When you're getting more advanced, and so we need to start applying some progressive overload somehow, right? Intensity, load is the main driver of strength. So let's bring it back to that first slide. We talked about strength, the ability to produce force, hypertrophy, building muscle mass. We want both of those things. Intensity is the main driver of strength. And so at some point you need to progress in weight, not just sets and reps. Like you could initially, hey, I did this weight for 10, then I did it for 12, and I did it for 14. you just keep going down that path for forever, you're just going to, get, have some good endurance at moving that weight, but you're not really going to get much stronger necessarily, right? So at some point we need to progress and load. And that still could be in that 6 to 12 rep range for a while, just getting stronger there. But at some point, getting into lower rep ranges, as your skill improves to be able to handle, weight that's going to be challenging in a 1 to 5 rep range, but still be able to do it well and safely, that can further progress peak strength. What is like the most force that you can produce as a person? Volume, mainly in terms of sets per week, is the main driver of hypertrophy. Yeah. So any set from 5 to 30 reps at the same level of exertion is shown to have a similar net effect on hypertrophy. And there's this study that kind of backs up the previous 2 points. So what does that mean? If I did a set of 5 at all out effort, I could not have done a 6th, and I did a set of 25 at all out effort, I could not have done a 26th. Those did different things to my body. We can get into the minutia a little bit of like different ways, different mechanisms your body has for building muscle, but the net effect essentially is the same. Right? So just accruing hard sets. That does not mean that, if you can stop at 8 with what you could have done for 12, because, 8 was as good as 12. No, like it needs to be hard. You still got to accrue hard sets. But there's a wide variance in where you, what rep range you work at, right? So basically, big takeaway, use a variety of rep ranges because there's benefits to getting good at moving heavier weights. There's benefits to improving your muscular endurance. Certain patterns just kind of work better in certain rep ranges. Certain things are kind of too complicated to do 30 times well, but certain patterns are really simple and we like them in that range, blah, blah, blah. But so we like a variety of rep ranges and find ways to add more sets per week. So that could be adding a day or 2 to your routine. That could be, doing things in a condensed fashion to where you're getting more sets done in your workouts. There's a lot of different ways you can pull levers here to get there, but do more sets per week if you want to continue to build more muscle mass.
And you'll notice even just from our programming, those that have done all of our kind of beta stuff and then moving on, we'll tend to put a little more emphasis on one aspect, a little bit more towards another. So our body, again, is continually adapting. It might be a little bit more intensity-based, might be a little bit more volume-based. But that's something you'll kind of see. And as I said, as questions come up, definitely feel free to ask. But depending if your goal is mainly more in the strength realm, you might do more months in the intensification, versus the accumulation. Or like you see, like weightlifting, we just had that seminar. There's weight limits to your different weight classes. So depending on what they want to train for, we might do a little more of one or the other, or do more strength work in these say movement patterns, but I'm going to do a little extra mass for my traps to help support the weight of the load once overhead, whatever that might be. So you'll see some of these various details as we go through over the months.
Yep. So for Team Thrive, like we generally want to be good at both of these things. We'll always do both these things every program. Like Peter said, kind of bias one or the other just to keep progressing the body in different ways. Add some intensity, keep that the same, add some volume, and kind of go back and forth, etc. Just because you can't add just one of these for forever without hitting a little stall, right? And so in summary, to kind of wrap things all up, strength train, do it. If that's your big takeaway, forget all the other details. That's fine. Strength train, please do it. Prevent injury, improve capacity, be efficient with your time, kick ass when you're 90. Okay. Do your fundamental movements, push, pull, squat, hinge. Okay. So don't just sit there and do some wrist curls in front of the TV and call that good, right? No, do the big movements, get your whole body strong. Keep sets reps simple at first. If you're new to this, don't need to go crazy. Just, stay in that kind of rough zone right there. But add progressive overload somehow. And then eventually will take you towards focusing, more on intensity for strength, volume for hypertrophy, or a mixture of both if you want both of those things, which we recommend that you do. Cool. And I believe that was my last point. So yeah, any questions from the crowd? We had a couple from the intake form, but we'll kind of get to our live people first. Any questions from the crowd?
Yeah, hey, I had one in the chat. I'll read it out. So one of the slides was very interesting to me. It says adults lose 1 to 2% of your muscle mass per year. I believe Peter said this started around 30. So I'm turning 30 next year. Will the strength training kind of delay the muscle mass loss, or do you need to start as you get older, taking supplements like a mass gainer to try to offset that?
Yeah, great question. So the research there is in the absence of training, like you would just kind of build this cumulative loss as time went on. Training can help stall that. Or if you are not at your potential, you can still build muscle in those ages, right?
And strength,
so
yeah.
and strength. Yep. So yeah, say you're at 70% of your genetic potential or whatever. Well, maybe your potential is declining slowly for you, but you can still build, right? Yeah. There might become a theoretical time at which you max out your potential. Say you were the best in the world at strength training, and you're 35. There might not be much left to go, and you might now, even with training, have that slow decline. So that's kind of you can think of a simple way to say that.
Well, I was just going to say too, depending on when you start, some people start at 30. They're nowhere near their potential. Yeah. They have a long ways to go. Some people started at 10, so they're going to be neurologically very efficient at certain movements versus the untrained individual. So that'll make a factor. But like Kyle was saying, like in an untrained state with just our normal kind of biological aging and rhythms, we're going to get a little bit better and going through puberty, hitting kind of our peak in our 20s, and then start that slow, that steady decline. And I think a good example, if you look, because power is like the first thing that we will lose, power, because that's a fundamental part of our power is strength. How much force can we produce, and then how quickly? So if you go, like I said, with your elite people who've been training for a while, they're going to hit their peak and slowly start that decline from their power, but they might be able to maintain their strength. And then as that starts to decline, then other aspects of it and hypertrophy and things like that. So the gist of it is resistance training, like Kyle was saying, resistance strength training, challenge the organism, make it have to adapt to continually to improve. And if you strength train consistently for 50 years, so you're going to be as strong at 70 as you were at 30. With training age, I don't see how that's humanly possible, but your decline will be so much slower, and probably the expectations that you have of yourself will of course change too.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're untrained or if you're at your potential, there'll be a little bit of decline. For most of us, that's just, hey, know that that's what would happen in the absence of training. Train your hardest to offset that. But even the client featured in the longevity slide, he put on 6 pounds of muscle mass in his age 79 year. Yeah. Because he was on it with his training, he was on it with his nutrition, and made it happen. So it's he wasn't at his potential yet, so he had some room to go. So it's never impossible to keep growing. So fantastic question. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Great answer.
Anything, but to get back to your specific question about should you be taking supplements, again, refer back to that one slide about, what's your goal? If your goal is to gain weight, strength train, eat enough protein, eat enough caloric surplus. So you might need to do that to abide by those concepts, but you might not need to do that to abide by those concepts. But those concepts are what matter. Supplementation or mass gainer would be, methods to get to those concepts, optional methods to get to those concepts. Yeah. Cool.
A couple ones that were emailed in.
Yeah, the main one, let me see. Oh, I had it written down the notes of the slide, was what weight do I start with on an exercise? Like where how do I know what weight to begin with? For full beginners new to strength training, usually what I'm telling a new client or someone who's coming into a group class is, hey, I want tonight to feel like a 6 out of 10. I want you to be aware your body is working. I want you to feel muscle engaging, but you could still do several more when you're done. You're just kind of aware your body's working, because when you're new, it's such a novel stimulus that even at that level of intensity, you're going to see some change. They're still going to be a little sore the next day. If they had gone 10 out of 10, they would have felt like they got hit by a bus, maybe hated it and never come back.
And they mainly injured themselves.
Or injured themselves. Yeah. So in the early going, hey, what weight gets you to 6 out of 10? And that's a much better way to answer the question than saying, start with 20 pounds. Well, because to some people that might be crazy. To some people who worked on a farm their whole life, that might feel like nothing, So, 6 out of 10 intensity for beginners, usually then gradually building it up till about an 8 out of 10 intensity. And on most patterns, we're kind of staying around that intensity level. You could still do 1 or 2 more repetitions for most of your sets just to make sure technique stays, rock solid. You're doing things safely. You're occasionally, as you get more experienced, or on patterns that are safer to do so, taking yourself all the way to failure. And whatever weight you need to do that, that's the way you should do. So for more trained individuals who are learning a new pattern, I kind of say the same thing. Hey, maybe today I want you to at a 6 or 7, even if this person's got a lot of experience overall, but this is new. But then gradually progressing in intensity over time. So it just depends on your experience in general, your experience with the pattern, and then how safe the pattern is. Things that are a little less self-limiting. There's a lot of load on your body. A lot of more things could go wrong. Hey, maybe leave a little more in the tank on that one. Something where you're, supported and safe. And, if you, fail, you just stop. That's it. No harm happens to you. Well, then feel free to push it a little harder on that one.
Yeah.
that was the big one from the chat ahead of time. And then the other was asking about kind of different weights on different patterns. Hey, how do I know if I'm ready to progress on something but not other things? Yeah, that'll just totally happen. Again, kind of keep abiding by that rate of perceived exertion scale, 1 to 10. How hard is this? If this one's easy, but this pattern's not, well, keep that one there and move this one up. You're not gonna progress evenly across the board on all things as much as we might like that to happen. That would be lovely, but not usually how it works. So just keep plugging along. I think those are the only two from the questions ahead of time. Anything else from our live audience? Going once, going twice.
Yeah, for me, appreciate the presentation though. You guys crushed it.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it. Yeah, thank you very much. Cool. So we'll wrap up our recording. Thanks to all you guys who gave this a listen, and we will catch you next month with a nutritional focus. So
Yeah,
more info on that.
And I'd say like the questions ahead of time are always helpful,
Yeah.
you know, especially once we start to introduce it, anything you guys can think of along those lines. So we can even kind of skew the conversation more towards that is always helpful. Right? We're here to help you guys. We're here to help you guys thrive and continue to progress and challenge yourself and, you know, achieve things maybe that you didn't think were possible.
Yep. Yeah. That's like our main goal with the education is kind of give you Peter always says like the 10,000 foot overview, you know, like, hey, what are the things that really matter here? What are the main concepts? And then we'd love to zoom in on whatever is of most interest to you guys, kind of, but with placing it in the context of the main things that really matter. So that's kind of our big vision with the education. And yeah, we look forward to keeping that going.
Yeah. See you guys next month.
See ya.